lucha-masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you in partnership with Masked Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to lucha-masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, luchacentral.com presents Straight Out of the Bodega with King, FatBoy, Papo Esco.
From the wrestling world to the podcast world, it's Straight Out of the Bodega with your host,
the King FatBoy, Papo Esco.
You have arrived. Welcome. And thank you for pulling up to Straight Out of the Bodega. I'm your master of ceremonies, the King FatBoy Papo Esco. And week to week, it don't change. We're going to take you on a ride through the blocks, back alleys, and street corners of the bodega. We're going to give you everything you need. Pro wrestling, entertainment, and beyond. That's right, infinity and beyond. We want to be Buzz Light years ahead of any other podcast you hear. And we hope to bring that to you week to week. Straight ear candy for your listening pleasure. I'm ready. I know you're ready. So take a seat, pour up your favorite drink, and let's ride. Before we go any further, I just want to say that we here at Straight Out of the Bodega join the pro wrestling world in mourning the loss of two of our family members who tragically lost their lives. Shad Gaspard, former WWE superstar and one half of the tag team Crime Time, as well as Japanese reality star and pro wrestler Hana Kimura. We just want to say that we offer our condolences to the families and the friends of those two. We here at the podcast love you. We're thinking about your families, and we want you to rest in peace. What's going on, everybody? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. Doing great, actually. Had a good week. Busy, but good nonetheless. And I hope that next week promises to be even better and busier. We got our hands in a lot of different baskets right now. Some good business ventures that we are excited to be a part of, and we just want to see where they go. All these trains we hope to keep steamrolling down the tracks, man, like www.lucha-masks.com. Guys, this is the brainchild of Gabe Ramirez. This is powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution and in partnership with Masked Republic. I encourage you to go to the website and just look at the store. Look at all the face covers that we have available to help you fight COVID-19. Homegrown Pro Wrestling Revolution talent like El Cucuy, Gavilan, Viento, even yours truly, the King FatBoy Papo Esco. And we also have officially licensed luchadors on a grander scale like Penta, Rey Fenix, Ultimo Dragon, Psycho Clown. The list goes on and on. You guys need to go there, check it out at least, and if you like something, click the add to cart button, buy it, and just help us help you stay safe in this whole thing. Another thing we got going on, I told you guys last episode, we are now partnered up with the Lucha Central Podcast Network. Lucha Central Podcast Network came to the table and we liked what they were hearing. So here we are, bringing you Straight Out of the Bodega every single week, hoping that you help us become the top podcast anywhere. You know, we really have grand aspirations, and I hope with you guys listening to us and continuing to support us, we will reach that goal. Shout out to Kevin Kleinrock, who heads up Masked Republic and Lucha Central. Speaking of which, we have part 2 of the interview. Kevin Kleinrock. Man, the first one, if you heard it, come on. If you didn't think that was a good one, you're tripping. It was a great interview. A lot of good knowledge extended to us. A lot of good history told. I mean, so many stories. I cut you off last time, though, because it got a little bit too long, but we're going to pick up where we left off. And where we left off was Wrestling Society X. Man, They were about to have a season 2, and they were about to introduce more titles. I need to know what happened next. I know you want to hear what happened next, so we're going to listen in together. But before we do, we have to go to the stunning Denise Salcedo and Lucha Central.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a look at all the great shows available this week on the Lucha Central Podcast Network, where you can find each show on its own or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network for every show in one easy feed. Just like the last 2 Mondays, this week we bring you the debut of one more monthly series, this one called The Business of the Business. Hosted by multi-decade wrestling writer, producer, promoter, and current Masked Republic president, Kevin Kleinrock. The series will take listeners into the inner workings of how officially licensed merchandise is made. This week on the show, graphic designer and illustrator Jeffrey Everett, who's created works for everyone from Seth Rollins to Rollins Band, and from Pentacero M to the Pope. Yes, the Pope. This is a series you are not going to want to miss. Tuesday's Mats, Mask, and Mayhem takes you back inside the temple as they get inside Lucha Underground Episode 3. If you're in the United States, you can head to Tubi.tv, where you can watch each episode of the series in advance to each week's MMM show. Don't miss the insider perspective from those who were there on set as the very first season unfolded. Thursday and Friday, we have you covered in both English and Spanish. First up, on Straight Out of the Bodega, Papo Esco, Gabe Ramirez, and Kevin Kleinrock continue their conversation on a number of California scenes, wrestling promotions, and businesses. And on La Mesa de los Márgaros, CMLL luchador, member of the legendary Casas family, son of Felino, Tiger Casas, pulls up a seat around the table. On Friday, the Lucha Central Podcast Network brings you Lucha Central Weekly and Lucha Central Weekly en Español. Get all the latest updates from Mexico and the most newsworthy notes on luchadores across the globe, including a look at what went down at AEW Double or Nothing, and the latest on AAA's plans to resume shows. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms. And please be sure to give a rating and review to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central. Have a great week.
It was exciting for me because just watching the show, like just from what I remember from back in the day, you know, I thought it was something new. I was excited because, you had guys that I had seen in like tape trading and just kind of like putting my, just talking with people. Vampiro came, and then Vampiro became the Wrestling Society X champion. Then here comes Judas Macias, and he becomes the champion. I'm thinking, they're gonna have like this other champion.
Well, okay, so let me take a real quick
what happened
to touch on Papo's point. There was going to be a tag team tournament season 2. I was going to do a women's title season 3 because our seasons were only 10 episodes, so it wasn't like it was going to be. And there was a possibility that we were going to be able to roll right into more seasons, the way that it was structured. So I had a lot of plans for season 2 already mapped out, especially talent plans. The current Finn Balor and Nigel McGuinness were going to be there. Sami Zayn was going to be there, hopefully. Sami Zayn was almost going to be there first season, but being Canadian, we couldn't get a visa in time. Pac was going to be there first season, but we got a visa for him. We got a 10-year or whatever it was, 7-year visa for him to work, but there was basically a 1-day hiccup in him getting the visa, and that's why we called M-Dog 2 days or 1 day before we started taping and got him on a plane out there to be Teddy Hart's partner, because that was originally supposed to be Pac. And then third season, we were going to do the women's tournament. It was going to be an 8-woman tournament. Someone just tweeted about this today, so it's reminding me of it today. But my idea was that Lacey, who is the host, but outside of Wrestling Society X, Lacey was a very good wrestler in Shine and Shimmer, Ring of Honor, etc. My plan was that she was going to end up making herself the 8th entrant into the women's tournament and have the super heel character. Colt Cabana was going to be part of season 2 as part of the Lizzie and Matt Sydal storyline, along with Roderick Strong. Colt and Roderick were going to be frat brothers of Matt Sydal's, and obviously Colt in season 1 ended up being Matt Classic. Colt tells a funny story there. It was basically, I told Colt he was going to come in season 2, and he was just trying to get a payday. He was just angling for any way possible to get on it. He's like, "Oh, let's do this. I'll just, give me like a match as a job or whatever." I'm like, "Cool, whatever. Not my money. I had the spot. I really like Cabana." And then that Matt Classic character ended up becoming one of the best things and most memorable things of the show, and lives on today in Lucha Vavoom, including a mini Matt Classic. So I had plans, but few things went wrong. I think, obviously, I don't have 100% proof of any of this, but number one, one of the lessons I learned was, let me take a step back. When I pitched this to MTV, my pitch was essentially a business model that is very similar to what Bellator and Viacom have today. I wasn't pitching MTV on just doing a TV show. I was pitching MTV on being business partners in something that would extend beyond the TV screen. I was like, you can't take real world road rules and fill arenas with it. You're not going to make, the Hills action figures. Let's build this. And my thing to them was, listen, you guys have supported wrestling since day one. WWE would never have blown up without War to Settle the Score and without, you guys supporting them. And, you guys have supported WWE programming throughout the year, but you never make any money from it other than the TV show.
Enough.
Embrace this. Let's start a brand together, make money all over, pay-per-view, video games. Let's do this. But what I learned and what has formed my business knowledge going forward with Masked Republic is you can't pitch that to the television people. You got to pitch that to the corporate people, because the television people are only worried about TV ratings. That's all they care about. And the other thing with television, and when I say this, you'll go like, yeah, this totally makes sense. The risk is not often worth the reward. And that's why you see the same television show format, whether it's a singing show or a dating show or some kind of reality show. When it's a hit, all the networks copy it. But there's not a lot of innovation. Because if you're a TV exec and you put your neck out on the line for a new concept and it fails, you could be fired. But, you get hit after hit after hit, or even not even hit after hit. You just can make mediocre shows that don't get anybody fired, and it's kind of a safer bet. And so I think that what happened was, even though when we sold the show in, people were like, yeah, let's do wrestling. Before we ever got to air, I don't think there was anybody inside MTV that was willing to put their neck out for, let's really promote this show and let's embrace it. It was kind of like, let's see what it does, and if no one puts their neck out for it, nobody's going to get fired if it doesn't do well. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You don't promote it. Just like when Vince, when Vince McMahon puts somebody out there, doesn't give them a good push or good storyline, and 2 weeks later he's like, ugh, they can't draw. Nobody cares about them, whatever. It's that similar kind of thing. And the other thing is, at the time, there was a lot of turnover within MTV. Like, literally, like that week that we went on the air, the first week, like a certain percentage of the workforce got fired and executives got shuffled around. And I just don't think it was not a priority. But what really kind of happened on the day-to-day of it was they had built this block that one of the reasons we sold the show was MTV did not have any male viewers really at that point, right? It was a lot of female viewers, and MTV was trying to figure out, how do we get male viewers back? So they created this night around guy-centric programming. It was us. It was Real World Road Rules Challenge. It was one of the, I think, Jackass spin-off type shows with the BAM or something. And it was this whole block, 2-hour block, 4 shows of guy-centric programming. Now, we never got any promotion. Like, literally, I think they ran a couple spots, maybe, for Wrestling Society X. You know, when I went in there, my eyes wide, not really understanding the business. I was like, yeah, you guys have, Impact Wrestling over on Spike. You guys, aren't you going to run a commercial for Wrestling Society X over on that network that you own also? And they're like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Things did not really make sense. And so that very first week, all of the shows did not do that great. But we were the only show that actually hit the number that they targeted for us. I think it was like a 1.0 in the ratings, right? We weren't the highest rated show. Some of the other shows still beat us, but all of the other shows did worse than their projected rating. We were the only one that hit that number. For whatever reason, somebody decided in week 2, we're not going to promote any of the shows except for the first show of the block, which was not us. We're just going to promote the first show in the block, and viewers will hopefully stick around for the other shows. That did not work either. And then in week 2, the ratings went down. And at week 3, they had pretty much given up, I think, on the entire block. Certainly, they had kind of given up on what they were going to do with us. I mean, one of the biggest rumors, so to speak, about WSX was that Fireball incident with Vampiro and Ricky Banderas, that led to us kind of being postponed or canceled or anything. Banderas, and that had nothing. That was like, people just picked up that story and ran with it, but that was complete bullshit. There was no truth to that matter. It literally was a matter of the block tanked, all the shows tanked, and they called us up after like 5 weeks or 4 weeks and said, all right, we're going to marathon the rest of it, all in one night. Oh, and we're not going to air the 10th and final episode. We're going to hold off on that. Maybe we'll do something like that. Maybe we'll put it on pay-per-view. A 23-minute episode. They were thinking, this is how not smart they were about the business. They were thinking that maybe they were going to hold a 23-minute show as a pay-per-view. Now, in the end, that worked out great for us because when we put out the DVD, that was the only way to see that match. I mean, now obviously it's on YouTube or see that show, but that's definitely part of why we sold 100,000 plus units on DVD was the exploding cage match, the Piranha Death match, the 10th and final episode that nobody saw. And that was it, and shout out to Mike Johnson from Pro Wrestling Insider because a lot of people, there's a lot of wrestling websites out there. Not many websites truly get the inside scoops because they have sources everywhere. There's a few of them, right? Observer, PW Insider, maybe a couple others. It was Mike Johnson that told me that Wrestling Society X was going to get canceled before anyone at MTV did. That's how freaking plugged in everywhere Mike Johnson is. He had an insider. And he's like, he still to this day, he's like, man, that was one of the worst calls I've ever had to make in my life, was calling you to be like, hey, man, just to let you know, word inside of MTV is you're getting canceled. I'm like, what? I remember where I was standing outside of the photo chem office where we were doing post-production for the show. And I went back to Houston and I'm like, hey, man, have you heard anything? He's like, no, that's bizarre. And like, I think it was like the next day we got that email basically saying, so this is what's going to happen. And I'm like, holy shit. So anyway, shout out to Mike Johnson for always having my back.
So with Wrestling Society X not moving any further, let me ask you this. If Wrestling Society X had continued, would you have been able to come across the Cold Day in Hell XPW reunion show, the 10-year anniversary show, things like that? They came after, right? You started doing.
I honestly
you got
don't
back
remember
into
the
timeline,
timeline,
fold for those shows, right?
If Cold Day in Hell happened after 2007, then yes. So those were two very different productions. So for Cold Day in Hell, that was a Big Vision Entertainment production. I sat there with Houston. We put together a budget. We put together the show. We taped the show specifically to distribute on home video for Big Vision. After I left Big Vision at basically end of 2009. 2010, I moved to Arizona for a year, and I was done with Big Vision. Big Vision really didn't exist at that point. There was no money. Big Vision never went bankrupt, but there was no money. I hadn't been paid for 3 months. That was after taking a pay cut of 50% for 6 months. It was literally the worst of times. And so I left, but XPWX, the 10-year anniversary, happened after that. And that was actually put on by Mike Hartsfield, who was worked behind the scenes at XPW. And Mike was really instrumental. I was there. I think I maybe ran music or sound or whatever for that. But those tapes never got released because essentially there was drama over who would own it, who would have the rights, who would do whatever. So that show never saw the light of day because there was never an agreement that was put together between Rick and Houston and Mike over that. So those tapes are in limbo, aka I think White Trash Johnny Webb's garage somewhere.
Okay, well, I mean that. So let's fast forward a little bit, and we can have like a 7-hour show. I think so, and there's a lot of content that I definitely can ask about, but I want to fast forward to Masked Republic. I want to fast forward to your insertion into that, and how all that came to be, and what we're transitioning to now with a lot of joint ventures and a lot of lucha based, content. So talk to us about how you got into Masked Republic, and talk to us about how that is evolving.
Lucha to me had always been part of anything that I'd done, promoting in LA, right? But back in the day, here's a perfect example, right? The tag team Los Luchas. Having Los Luchas as a tag team on a show, on an indie show, made perfect sense. They were the only luchadors on most shows. So it didn't matter, that you had a tag team called Los Luchas, as opposed to like today where, they come to PWR and yes, they're still Los Luchas, but you got to make sure you drive home Phoenix Star and Zocre because everybody's a fucking Los Lucha, in PWR. So growing up coming up through the business in LA, everything, from Slammers having Hombre de Oro to Guerrero Azteca to, there's always a luchador or 2 or 3, on shows. And I loved Lucha Libre, especially, now we're talking in that XPW era, we were, so 95, 96, I was coming home from my day on campus in college and watching, Raw versus Nitro and watching all the opening matches and watching all the ECW guys and promos Tekka. And I was super, super, as a fan, into Lucha Libre. Loved the style, loved everything about it. And so I knew that I wanted to kind of do something down the road in Lucha Libre. Obviously, I started the DVD line with Conan, and Ruben and I met. At the time, Masked Republic was literally making masks. It was a small company that him and a mask maker in San Diego and Tijuana had, and they were making masks for Psychosis and other gear. They were making gear for Sean Waltman, knee pads for Bryan Danielson. This for that person or whatever. And once Ruben and I got to know each other and started talking about, so Ruben had also promoted wrestling in San Diego under the Lucha Mania name with Miguel, Rey Mysterio Sr. as his partner. Ruben's background, real quick, is Ruben was a police officer in San Diego. He hated going to the gym. hated doing traditional exercising. Grew up as a big fan of Lucha Libre between San Diego and LA. Grew up going to the Olympic Auditorium, going to the Auditorio in Tijuana. And so he decided to enroll in Ray Sr.'s Lucha Libre class as his way to stay in shape and not have to go to the regular gym. And he trained. He even wrestled some shows, which isn't really talked about, but he did. But because he was an American who spoke both languages, he kind of became the de facto business manager / booking agent for Miguel, Ray Sr., for Nicho, for a number of other wrestlers. And then him and Miguel started promoting Lucha Mania shows in San Diego. And at the time, they were really the only indie in the U.S. that was booking both CMLL and AAA guys on the same show and getting away with it, mostly because, these are local San Diego shows that weren't really getting mentioned. The web wasn't what it was now, and people weren't really finding out about stuff. And so he had that background. And then right after Wrestling Society X, again, I was, on one hand, I was content to walk away from wrestling. I mean, if you've seen that Wrestling Society X DVD set, that was my, swan song. I was like, if I'm going out in a blaze of glory, and I'm going to put everything into that DVD set. I put a script of a show in there. We did back, all this alternate commentary. I was like, here's this thing that I am proud of, and if I die tomorrow, or my grandkids, whatever, have it in their hands, and this is my legacy in wrestling, I can be proud of this DVD set. So I was content, but I was always like, what can I do next? And the question was, to me, from a business sense, what is the one area of pro wrestling that has never really been brought to the level it can be in the United States? It's not hardcore wrestling. It's not women's wrestling. To me, it was lucha libre. I talk about it all the time. I see that there's this golden triangle of opportunity for bringing in fans of lucha libre. On one corner is your traditional pro wrestling fan. On another corner is the Hispanic community. And on the other corner, it's the pop culture fan, right? People who go to Lucha Vavoom, or really every time, I think PWR, right? You guys draw very diverse crowds depending on where you're going, right? If you're running, one of the more farming communities, you're getting 98% Hispanic audience. But when you do those shows in San Francisco, you're getting 40% straight up white hipsters that come to those shows, right? And so, yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing. It's and people don't think about that a lot.
They love us all the
time. People don't
same.
think about the fact that white hipster dude is never going to buy a John Cena t-shirt or a WWE ticket, but he'll rock a shirt with a Santo mask, even if he has no idea who the hell Santo is. Look at what Gabe's doing right now with the Lucha masks, lucha-masks.com, and the face coverings, right? There are people that are going to that website, and they're, maybe they're buying a Penta mask, and maybe they're buying an LA Park mask, but even before those even existed, and continuing now, people are just seeing badass designs for these characters that Gabe has created. I'm talking about you like you're not here, but
facts. No, that's facts. I mean, Gabe will tell you who's sold out. He's told me who's sold out, and even though a lot of those names have not reached a prominent,
I'm gonna put Gabe over for a second here.
Focus.
I think
they're still selling
listen,
out.
Well,
man.
I was saying this on the other podcast that I just did recently. I think it was on that Spotlight one. I think PWI. I am not just saying this because it's you guys I'm talking to. Like I said, I've said this elsewhere. PWR is the most under the radar promotion that doesn't deserve to be under the radar. They deserve to be well on the radar because, you guys are drawing 1,000 people plus every time you're going out and doing a show, which is still ginormous by indie stand. I mean, Ring of Honor, Impact, they're not drawing 1,000 people. Most places they're going these days. On top of that, people don't realize that Gabe creates these characters, trademarks the characters, creates these incredible costumes and masks for these characters, and there is this incredible world that just is Pro Wrestling Revolution. And what I love about this Lucha Masks opportunity right now is that friends of mine that I've sent to the sites, guys like Jeff Everett, who's one of my friends and one of our artists that does a lot of stuff for Masked Republic, who has a very keen sense of design and style, and he bought a few of the masks just because they were badass. And I think that, so there's that pop culture element to Lucha Libre. And so to me, I knew that my next venture in wrestling was going to be Lucha Libre. And to me, it's my last venture. I have gone all in every part of my business. I mean, seriously, every part of my business became Masked Republic. And I joined with Ruben, and I loved the Masked Republic name. I saw no reason for us to change the name, even if we were going to, combine forces, and he was going to bring his relationships and his experience as a lucha promoter. And I was going to bring kind of like what I would call my American business sensibilities and my business, kind of connections and plans. And our whole thing was to build this multi-platform company. And it's really, it's changed over time. At the beginning, it was just about merchandising. And, we went to the Auditorio and met with a bunch of the guys, Damien and Halloween and Psychosis. And we pitched them on the idea of it's really hard for Americans to get your merchandise. We want to set up a website. We want to sell your stuff officially to Americans. You do Mexico. We're not going to touch your business in Mexico. Let us help your fans acquire stuff legally, not bootleg, and you're going to make money for it. And that's kind of where the merchandise side of Masked Republic started. Then fast forward to a few years ago, we started our Legends of Lucha Libre brand and got into traditional licensing, where now we're not sitting there making and selling T-shirts off our website. We're making a licensing deal to put T-shirts in this store or on this website, or we're making toys. We're making building block figures. We're making life-size cutouts, calendars, books, and that's all kind of true traditional licensing, as if we were a TV show or as if we were a brand. And now we've basically made this NFL Players Association, but for luchadors, where if you want to get represented and you want to have help negotiating your contracts and you want to have help, getting merchandise created and stuff, you can come to us. And if you're of a certain level, we'll bring you into the family and, really, really do that. But right after Wrestling Society X, we hit the ground running to try to sell another television show. And that was Viva la Lucha. And at the time, there was the G4 television network, which was the gaming and technology network. And G4 was looking to expand into other types of programming. And that year, they greenlit 4 pilots, 2 wrestling ones, us and Kaiju Big Battle, and 2 MMA ones. And we went out. This was a whole different kind of production. I learned a whole different side of television production here, where with MTV, they financed the whole show. They had their fingerprints all over the whole show. They owned everything. With Viva la Lucha, they were partially financing the show, and Big Vision was partially financing the show. But what that did was that gave us more creative control, and it also allowed us to own all the back end. So granted, the show didn't go anywhere, but we would have owned the touring, the pay-per-view, the video games, toys, whatever, as opposed to that MTV deal. Now, just like MTV, they had some wacky ideas. For example, they requested that we cover the rope in red velvet, like in Nacho Libre. And I had to explain to them that if you cover the ropes in red velvet, then the wrestlers cannot actually do wrestling moves off the ropes, and that's not going to work. So we had to convince them that we would just do red velvet ring skirts instead. But so we shot the pilot at the Palenque in Parque Morelos, which was a cockfighting arena, and there was literally chicken blood all over the floor when we got there to set up, which was a whole different experience for a lot of these, California television producers and shooters and people that were like, what is this third world country that you brought us into? But that's neither here nor there. And the problem with that show was, before we even turned that show into the network, again, network turnover, and it was decided that they didn't want to have any wrestling or MMA, and all the projects were dead. So that was the Viva la Lucha experience. But that was the first time that Ruben and I produced television together. And again, very similar sensibilities. We got along great. I don't speak Spanish. It's not a secret. So when it comes to the negotiations with talent, when it comes to trusting, I'm just the white guy from California that a lot of luchadors, who don't know me aren't going to just, trust right away, right? I've got history now with people, people like Damien, who I've worked with for decades now, and people like Conan who vouch for me. And granted, there are certain people where if Conan vouches for you, they will never talk to you or deal with you. But we are currently banned from doing anything with CMLL because somebody's convinced that Conan owns Masked Republic, which is absolutely not the case. So now there is that trust factor, but still, Ruben handles all of the direct contact with the luchadors, bringing them into the family, taking all of our licensing proposals and deals to them and explaining to them what the opportunity is, answering questions, figuring out if they want to be part of that opportunity or not for toys or posters or t-shirts or whatever. And, and then on top of that, Expo Lucha was kind of Ruben's dream ever since we went down to Mexico and saw the Lucha Libre La Experiencia expo that they used to do there. And so Ruben's, put together Expo Lucha over the years, and now we're expanding that business. But, we've got a lot of parts of our business that aren't even really public yet in terms of trying to develop content for film and television. We launched the Luchaverse, our comic book world, which we're now trying to develop for film and TV. We've got some animation projects that we're working on, but the biggest, newest, latest thing is the expansion of this Lucha Central brand. And we launched Lucha Central a couple of years ago because there was no kind of easy site for somebody who's kind of a novice at Lucha Libre to come to and get their Lucha news, videos, photos. There are some blogs out there like Lucha Blog, right? If you know about Lucha Libre, and if you're a little bit already of a fan, Lucha Blog is a tremendous resource. Cubs fan. It's basically the Wrestling Observer of Lucha Libre. And then there's Lucha World, which is another great resource. Those sites focus on the quality and content, I guess I would say, of the written word. They're not there to have, this nice, shiny, what I call the USA Today approach to our Lucha Libre site. Our content's great. We've got great writers, great analysis, but we're trying to make an easier access for that casual fan who wants someplace easy to go, catch up on everything Lucha Libre in the day, see some videos, see some shows, see the match of the day. And that's what Lucha Central was created for. And so after 2 years of doing kind of the old version of Lucha Central, our trademark was done and processed. We had it, and it was time to expand Lucha Central as a brand into other areas. And with that, go ahead.
So before we get into Lucha Central, and I want to touch on the current events that are going on with that, my son, young Papo Esco, he wanted me to ask a question because I was doing research, and in my research, I found that
that's my other life outside of wrestling
content that has something to do with Neon Alley. Sorry. And you mentioned it a little while ago with the anime and all that stuff like that. So my son is a huge anime fan, and he knows about Neon Alley as young as he is. And not too many people would know that
I have the corporate job outside of Masked Republic,
outside of professional wrestling.
Yep.
And
he has to pay the bills. He has to eat. I need some, you know what I mean? So it's not going to be through wrestling.
Absolutely. But I just want to let you know. It's
funny because
there are several fans out there.
We get no secret. In my corporate life outside of Masked Republic, I work for a company called Viz Media, which is the largest distributor of anime and manga in the United States. And what actually got me there was my background in pro wrestling. And they were looking to launch an over-the-top service. This was 8 years ago now, before everybody had an over-the-top service. And it was called Neon Alley. And it was going to be their own anime app and channel streaming service. And I went in there, and part of the reason that they hired me was because they saw my background in niche content creation, distribution, management, and they thought, you know what? This guy doesn't come from the anime space, but he understands the type of fandom that we have and understands creating this kind of niche content. Maybe he can bring kind of an outsider perspective to the business. And so thankfully, my decades of being a content development and distribution exec in pro wrestling got me in the door there. But when I got in, I started looking at like the Viz message boards, and I would see that they had people on the message boards with screen names like CM Punk this, or Hardy Boys this, and I was like, does anybody here realize that there's such a huge crossover of anime fans and wrestling fans? And nobody inside Viz really knew, because nobody inside Viz, I mean, there was a few people that were wrestling fans, but a lot of people, have no concept. And so it's been cool since then too, because there's a lot of wrestling fans, or a lot of anime fans in the wrestling space, like Sasha Banks is, a huge Sailor Moon fanatic, and other people over time that have come through Viz. I've been able to take them, on a tour of the office and let them see the wonders that is, the Viz content that gets released. So, shout out to little Papo, and that's awesome.
Well, Papo, just so you know, Papo, just so you know, it's a small note that maybe you may not know, but
it's funny too, Gabe, because this came up in my house the other day.
Oh, really?
And Marilee, my wife, was like, "Wait, what? Gabe worked there?" She's like, "When was this?" I'm like, "It was when we were at the old office, but like we were together, so I'm sure it came up at some point." She's like, "I don't remember that at all." I'm like, "Yeah, he was making digital manga. Yeah. We had to digitize the entire library."
And that was my first exposure to manga. I remember the guy who was my boss at the time, he says, "Hey, are you cool with this?" I was like, "Yeah, man, shit, can't be that bad." And I run across like these church girls beating up a principal in this third world realm, and they're stabbing him and they're banging him in the up the ass. And I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Right? So I call Shannon and I go, "Hey, is this okay?" She's, "I don't know. Ask your boss." And I go, "Is this normal?" He goes, "Oh, no, it's just more the tame stuff. You'll get more into the crazier stuff later. Are you sure you're okay with this?" I was like, "Man, if you guys are okay with it, I'm okay with it." And I even asked Kevin, "Is this the norm here?" He goes, "Well, on certain days, you'll have cosplay." I'm like, "What?" And there it is. People would come in dressed up as Street Fighter and Totoro. And I was like, oh, my God. And it was a whole different world. And I remember finally running into Kevin in the secret break room that I wasn't aware of. And I walk up to the secret break room because I was only the vending machine that was working. And there was Kevin, lo and behold, man, working on everything under the moon, man. And he would skip his lunches, skip his breaks just to get a pitch out and so on. So like, Kevin has done so much stuff. And as far as for Revolution, a lot of things that happened for us is because of Kevin Kleinrock. When he got me that job at Viz Media, I was literally, during the, when those times everyone's out of work and so on. And there came Kevin. When Revolution was part of Netflix, that was because of Kevin Kleinrock. So a lot of the things that happened to me has been because of Kevin. Even during his DVD days with Big Vision, I was also doing DVDs, and I was also on the same market, nowhere near the level of Kevin, but I was also having I was the reason how I got APW into retail stores, into Fry's and Best Buy and all that. And once I left, I was trying to get Revolution into it through Kevin. And I remember Kevin was trying to politely tell me that my design sucked. And I kept trying, I go, dude, I understand. It wasn't my design direction. It was the boss who was telling me he wanted me to make it look shitty like this. And Kevin's like, yeah, So I sent Kevin my own personal stuff for Revolution. And he goes, oh, so you can do that? I was like, yeah. And even though we didn't get much ever into DVD because it was such a dead market,
we did the
Kevin and I have
the first 3D
worked on stuff,
wrestling show. We did when 3Net. There was a production company that called me and they wanted to do a kind of mini doc in 3D on a wrestling company, and I sent them over to Gabe. We've had a number of opportunities. I mean, I talk about it a lot. There's very few wrestling schools that regardless of our relationship. There are very few wrestling schools that Masked Republic, let's say, not even me, Masked Republic puts its stamp of approval on. And PWR has always been one of them because, we take pride in being able to tell people, go there, get trained. You're going to learn everything you need to learn. You're going to come out of there a pro, able to work anywhere, any style. So I always feel confident in sending television producers or people your way, and we've had a good run.
I mean, think about it though, Kevin. We did. We worked the thing with 3D Net, with Netflix. We did the stuff for Urban with the belts. We did the
Micro
stuff for
Championship
Hulk
Wrestling.
Hogan's. For Hogan's midgets. Yeah, Micro Championship Wrestling. We've done stuff with that.
Yep.
We met up in Mexico for
we ended
Lucha
up
Libre
using that
Exponencia
Oliver
for the
John and
expo
Blue
out there.
Demon, on a Viva La Lucha pay-per-view.
Yes. So like a lot of the stuff the Revolution has grown with, it's been, a lot because of Kevin's guidance, expertise that has let open doors for him that he has lended to Revolution. And I remember when I first started Revolution, someone had asked me on a podcast, like, who did I try to mold myself after? And off the bat, Kevin was one of them, and no, that is the absolute truth.
I'm not sure. Yeah, hey, there's one thing about Gabe that I know. Gabe don't lie,
and
don't lie.
Because
he tells
everything Kevin's done is things that I want to do. I was in DVD market. I was everything I've always wanted to do, and I always come to Kevin as my measuring stick of, is this cool? Because just last night we're working on a project together to get out for a website. I'm like, hey, Kevin, what do you think about this? And he's like, this took you 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, yeah.
It's funny because this came up in a conversation with my wife the other day too. Is that your graphic design skills in general are highly underrated. I think that PWR's posters and the assets that get used for the commercials are just top notch. A lot of people are now starting to do that style, and it's becoming kind of like the indie style of poster. Which I have to say, it's good to see because. Lord knows that there's a lot of bad indie posters out there as well. So I guess you can take imitation as the sincerest form of flattery there. But yeah, man, everything that comes out of PWR, all the assets, all the art, all the commercials, all the characters, everything, the design elements are there, but I think that's attributed to your background in in the creative arts.
I'll be honest with you. It's like when I first started Pro Wrestling Revolution, my inspiration behind that was also Rev Pro, which is one of the most underrated companies in Southern California. Yeah. Without Rev Pro, there wouldn't be launches of just about everything under the moon over there. And that's the attribute to Ron Rivera, who had that vision of lucha and having the Americanized stuff. You touched on Ruben, and with Conan, the footage, I was going to ask you, well, where was Ron Rivera? Because Ron Rivera was right behind him doing all the, handheld.
So that footage was the stuff that Ron shot a lot of it.
Exactly.
So when Conan ended up in XPW, that was because of his relationship with Ron and Ron brokering basically that deal of him coming in. Ron, to me, Ron Rivera is the single most underappreciated person. Certainly in the history of California wrestling, or indie wrestling, but I would actually venture to say even in the history of all of the United States and maybe globally with wrestling, because Rev Pro was every promotion these days is hybrid wrestling, mixing the Japanese and the lucha and the American style. But you did not get that out of a promotion. You got that maybe out of a tournament, but you didn't get that out of a promotion until you had Rev Pro. And people are going to sit here and say, oh, but PWG. Yeah, PWG came from Rev Pro. Now, it's not up yet, but coming very, very soon to luchacentral.com is going to be the entire complete archive, all 24 issues of Rudo Can't Fail magazine. You're going to be able to look at it, read it, all of it for free on the site. When that happens, everybody listening, please make sure you go read the Rev Pro issue. I think it's issue number 4. The cover is Rev Pro, a beautiful piece that actually referee and AEW's Rick Knox painted himself. But if you don't know the legacy of Ron Rivera and if you don't know the legacy of Rev Pro, then you don't know the history of indie wrestling in the United States. And you need to get yourself some education there.
And that was the inspiration for me, because when I was, in APW, I was like, my God, this Rev Pro website is insane. And credit to Jason Dedridge, who worked at LucasArts, and we had one of the best corporate websites. It was we had one of the first animated GIFs ever, wrestling wise, with Vic Grimes jumping off the garage on J.R. Benson, all that stuff. But Rev Pro had these graphics that was, insane, and that was because of Disco, with Disco Machine. And I told Disco all the time, I mean, you inspired me graphically for wrestling, and I go to him every so often now. Now, keep in mind, Disco hates talking about wrestling. He hates it but he still talks to me about it, and I go, hey, what do you think about this? And he is so deep in the graphics world, man. That guy has influence all over, and he'll tell me, oh, that's great, but this. And I'm like, oh, shit. Even when I think my stuff is decent, good looking, or good, he'll and I've always used that measuring stick, from art and so on with Disco in Southern California, how he influenced Lucha with design. Ron Rivera, which I met in 96, and he, would open doors for me Lucha-wise as well, and introduced me to Promo Azteca, which I still think at some point Promo Azteca could have been huge, just, I guess, wrong time, wrong time for it to come out. And if it came out now, I think it would have been the next big thing. I mean, look,
the thing that killed that, obviously, was WCW essentially telling... Listen, you can't keep doing both, right? It's either us or them, and of course they were going to choose the American payday. So, bad. But no, I mean, I would love to be able to acquire the Promo Azteca TV archive and do something with that on DVD or streaming or whatever. Man,
it's out there.
Such good stuff out there.
It's out there. I mean, it's there. I remember, Hall and Nash were a part of it. They actually wore the Promo Azteca t-shirts on Nitro. So like Promo Azteca is huge. I used to wear it. I used to have that. And, so Revolution was one of the names that inspired me for Pro Wrestling Revolution, was from Rev Pro. So for Ron Rivera, Disco Machine, and then Kevin Kleinrock, I've always had, these measuring sticks of what I want a company to be like. So when I do a poster, off the bat, Rev Pro. When I do, merchandise, or I asked Kevin the other day, I go, hey, Kevin, or whatever it was a month ago, hey, Kevin, look at these little action figures I'm about to release.
Oh, dude, I love those.
Like, oh, these are great. And I'm like, stop bullshitting. I mean, you have these super high-end 3D Ray Phoenix figures with blueprints, and I'm like, oh.
It's difficult. Listen, listen. I feel so lucky and blessed to be working with Boss Fight Studio. We are going to be putting out and this is just not hyperbole, but we are going to put out the greatest Lucha Libre action figures of all time. Now, having said that, there is a really, really cool retro thing in the classic Lucha Libre figures. The problem is, everybody else that's tried to do something with it, they've basically just gone and, repainted the cheapy ones that you pick up in a 10-pack, in front of the Auditorio de Tijuana. But you guys did something different. You not only did you find a way to kind of make these custom figures, but you went above and beyond with the packaging. I'm a huge packaging mark. I'm a huge, just how do you do the merchandising of it? What does the full package look like? And I think that, I don't sell yourself short on those figures, because no, they're not a $40, super articulated, put it in any wrestling move pose, comes with 2 sets of hands and three heads and, a light tube and all that stuff. But
geez, just put it over. Why won't you?
Exactly. I gotta put myself over.
No, but like the thing with Kevin though is like his experience with media is, I believe, what helps him with his mentality of what makes Masked Republic, Lucha Central, everything he does. For me, on packaging is no different. My graphic design background is educational software, retail publishing and all that stuff for Fry's Electronics, which that market now is obviously dead. You know what I mean? So I've done all that, you know, but again, I think Kevin, you know, says how I'm underrated, or some people, I think Kevin's one of those people that falls under that as well, because I think Kevin should be doing it, you know, at a higher level. A lot of his friends have gone on to do it at higher levels. I think Kevin should.
So here's my thing, though, right? I do want to be doing it at a higher level, but 100% that higher level is just going to be Masked Republic when it gets to that next level. I have no desire to ever work for anybody else, like full time in wrestling, you know, ever again. I enjoy and I am flattered when somebody reaches out to me and says, you know, hey, can you consult on this? Can you, you know, do you want to write for this? I mean, the Papo and I had talked about this a little bit a while back, but like Urban Wrestling Federation, right? Yeah. So for me, outside of Urban Wrestling Federation, from the very first, other than that $3 that I got from Slammers back in 1996, every dime that I've ever made in wrestling. Now, I had a great run of about 10 years where I was making six figures, either directly from pro wrestling or, you know, tangent to pro wrestling. Every single, and then I lost it all and I made no money and lost my house, my cars and all that. I had to start all over.
Oh my gosh.
But every single dime I made in pro wrestling was either a company I co-started or started, or, I mean, I built those things. Nobody ever wrote me a check to do anything in pro wrestling until Urban Wrestling Federation. And that was the only time, still now to this day, other than consulting here or there. But in terms of here, write and produce this for somebody else, you don't own it. You know, here's what the boss wants. Write and produce it. Yeah, I was lucky. Steve O'Neill brought me into that project and worked on it under Steve Carroll. It was a great experience, and it was awesome. You know, I truly felt honored to finally be getting a paycheck from wrestling that wasn't a company I had to build. But going back to that, you know, for me, you know, I decided, I mean, probably more than 5 years ago now. I mean, it could even be, you know, close to 10 years ago now. I mean, I decided that if I was going to put all my eggs in the Masked Republic basket, if I was going to take all my television production ideas and all my different things and do it as Masked Republic, then it was going to be, that was it. That was for the long haul. So, you know, Ruben and I are building this, and everything always takes longer than you think, longer than you hope. Literally, we're talking about one particular project right now that I'm going to knock on wood and cross my fingers, maybe is about to get to the next level. I've been working on that concept for 10 years. 10 years on and off and changing this and changing that and reformulating it and repitching it. And, you know, stuff takes time. But to me, this is, you know, my energies in pro wrestling are focused in Masked Republic. My hope is that, you know, one day that is my be all and end all. You know, we're making great progress. And, you know, but right now it's a lot about reinvesting. You know, the most of our operations right now are based around licensing. Most of the money from the licensing goes directly to the luchadors, and the money that we do make for Ruben and I, a lot of it just gets reinvested back into the company or reinvested back into projects. You know, I mean, you know how that is with PWR. Yeah. You know, it costs money to launch the Luchaverse and to do, you know, this comic book world. It costs money to, you know, create these sizzle reels or create these pitches and presentations, and you know, we keep building and building and working for hopefully the day that, you know, the way that I look at it is. Kind of summarizing it all, really. With Wrestling Society X, we had one of the biggest networks in the world put $3.5 million into launching a company, and it didn't mean a thing. And I learned then that if you don't have the machine in place, all the money in the world doesn't mean crap. So my goal since then, now going on 13 years, was let's build the machine. Let's build, even if the cogs on that machine are small, let's build licensing, merchandising, distribution, all these different pieces. And so that expanding those pieces that's easier than having to build them from scratch. So you can bet that next time I have an opportunity to put a wrestling product on television, I'm not going to have to wait 6 months or a year or 2 years to go, what do we do about T-shirts? What do we do about toys? What do we do about this? It's all there waiting to go. So what I'm doing now is I'm just setting up the dominoes, right? I'm setting up this TV concept, this animated concept, this book concept. And my hope is that once we get some of those projects to the next level, the dominoes start to fall into place, and suddenly we go from, no products on TV to 3, 4, 5 products on TV, and that's
Kevin.
But speaking of products, though, Papo, something that people may not know is Kevin brought a project to me that we were going to do. No, actually, we were going to do. We were going to meet with some people in San Francisco, and I had Demon. I had a bunch of people on the show at John O'Connell High School, and they were going to meet, and we were, preparing. I remember Kevin, and we're going to do all these cool things. And then the week of the show, they canceled. They weren't going to meet us no more. And a few weeks later, Masked Warriors was born. And that's another project that Kevin would have, been on. And then I feel like that was the closest thing I came to getting my break was doing that. And then Masked Warriors started. But literally, that was something that Kevin was pitching and was going to meet with us in San Francisco to do something lucha like they wanted to do. And the day before, Kevin, they canceled. And next thing you know, Masked Warriors appeared.
Yeah, that's a whole other, the history of AAA, and their bad luck. Some of it self brought on, some of it not. In the United States over the last 10 years, that's a whole nother broadcast for a whole nother time, man. Right. But yeah, no, Masked Warriors. Long story short, for those that know Masked Warriors from MTV 2 or 3 or whatever, when it got sold, it was sold as bringing AAA to the United States. Things happened. Yep. It ended up becoming a whole separate thing, which then was used to block AAA from coming to the United States for 5 years. And that led to then,
and they owned all the gimmicks, all the trademarks.
So then AAA ended up signing with us to avoid that from happening again. And then I got a call one day from Dorian, basically saying we have an opportunity to work with Robert Rodriguez and create this new thing, and we can't do that if we're in our contract with you. And I said, by all means. I'm never going to be able to bring you Robert Rodriguez. We'll tear up our contract, and that became Lucha Underground.
So, all that aside, I want to transition to the latest ventures that you have with Masked Republic, with Lucha Central, all the things that are going on now, all the experience that you've gained from all these years, from 16 on. How is that being incorporated into the new ventures? How are we going into the future for Masked Republic?
Well, I mean, really, it is all every day. It's what are the lessons from before? I think part of it is I don't do anything without a ton of research and thought going into it. When we launched our comic book world, I hadn't read a comic book. I mean, maybe a one-off here or there. I didn't collect comic books or read comic books regularly for probably 20 years, since probably right end of high school, probably 95, 96. And I decided, all right, well, if we're going to go in the comic book world, I got to get my feet back into it. So every week I was going to the comic book shop. I was reading, I was buying, I was figuring out what's hot, what are people into. And I spent a good 6 months doing research, figuring out what I wanted to do and what my ideas were for putting this Luchaverse together. And now, as we take Lucha Central into the next phase, which includes the podcast network, the TV show, and pay-per-view and a few other things, getting into the podcast space has been something that, I've had an eye on the podcast space for a long time because obviously, quote, everybody's doing it. But because everybody's doing it, I really wanted to understand how to build what I thought was going to be the right way of doing it for us, Masked Republic, and for whoever we were going to get involved with it. To be quite honest, I'm gun shy about certain things because of the way that Big Vision ended. And with Big Vision, I had brought a lot of people, a lot of independent wrestling companies, a lot of independent wrestling producers into, we're going to distribute your DVDs. Now, I didn't own Big Vision. I was the vice president, but I didn't own Big Vision. But I went out basically and I talked to people and I said, listen, we'll distribute your DVDs. You're not going to have to put up any money for it. We're going to author the DVDs. We're going to manufacture the DVDs. Big Vision's going to take all the risk. We're going to put it in stores. We're going to get paid. You're going to get the royalty that we agreed to, and hopefully everybody will be happy. Well, when the stores went bankrupt and then the distributors went bankrupt and then there was no money, I had a lot of people that were upset at me because they didn't get paid on DVDs. And it really messed me up in the head for a while because I felt like, listen, you didn't have to risk it. Now, I understand that some people felt like, yes, we didn't have to lay out money, but we also didn't sell the product ourselves and we could have made some money that way or, whatever. So I'm not discounting that at all. But what I'm saying is I built the largest independent content library and distributed it. And then in the end, people that I thought were my friends or I had a good relationship with, some of them were pissed off. And so, I'm very, very careful now, 15 years later, when there's opportunities, I want to make sure that the opportunities make sense, that there's, realistic expectations, whether it's, this thing might not pay out or this thing could pay out or whatever. I want to make sure that it doesn't cut into the current business that people are doing. And I wanted to understand, how could we use launching a podcast network to build Lucha Central's brand, to build Masked Republic's brand, to promote, our products, and how do we build this overall network that is the website, the podcast, the TV show, the pay-per-views, things like that. And so we spent probably a good year strategizing. And then with that, with having the proper trademark now of Lucha Central as a brand, we're able to go out and announce those plans to expand. And I'm very excited about the podcast network. It's ironic, I think, that, your show is now going to be part of the Lucha Central podcast network because
Whoa! You blew the spot. Oh, sorry.
Wait, did you sign anything?
You might as well go ahead and say it.
I thought this was the big reveal. I was revealing.
But
that was
I was trying to ease into it.
Yeah. See, just like Papo, he went from chapter 1 to the end of the book.
Right.
Now you want to just.
Sorry, do I need a drum roll? Should I find a drum roll?
We still had one more question. His next question is can you tell us what really happened with New Jack and Vic Grimes?
Here we go.
No, I can't, because honestly, I don't even know what really happened. I just know I was glad Vic hit inside the ring. So you would hit me up about doing an interview on your show before we even talked about, or before we had even made it public that we were going to be doing this podcast network.
It was fate.
And I'm not just putting on the network because you flattered me by asking me to be on your show. So we are launching this Lucha Central podcast network. It is going to have an array of bilingual shows. We've got a number of shows in Spanish, a lot of shows in English. And, I've really studied not just wrestling podcasts, but podcasts in general. I've been listening to a lot of sports podcasts, a lot of entertainment podcasts. And what we're trying to do with the network is bring literally something for everyone. And I know that sounds cliche, but one of the podcasts that I really like listening to is Sports Business Daily, right? And it's a 5 to 7 minute podcast every day. And you listen, and it tells you all the top stories of the last 24 hours of the sports business world. And that's it. You're in and you're out. And so one of the things we're going to be doing for Lucha Central starting in about a week or two is the Lucha Central Lightning podcast, which is going to be 5 to 7 minutes every morning. Here's all the details of what went down yesterday, and here's what you don't want to miss today from television, pay-per-view, live events, what's on our website, etc. And so that's the shortest of short content we're going to be coming out with Monday through Friday, every day.
Just kind of like this podcast, right?
Right.
5 to 7 hours.
Exactly.
The podcast that has to have 2 days. We're WrestleMania. Right. We're the WrestleMania podcast. That's what we are.
And then on top of that, we've got the Lucha Central Weekly, which is kind of your traditional pro wrestling podcast. We have one in English, one in Spanish, Lucha Central Weekly and Espanol, Lucha Central Weekly. That's going to be where you get your, hour to 2 hour rundown of all the happenings over the last week in AAA, CMLL, Mexican Indies, U.S. Indies, the luchadors in WWE and TNA and Impact and Ring of Honor and MLW. So those are kind of your traditional shows. And then we're bringing on other shows that we just like as fans that add something that has some kind of a link to Lucha Libre, i.e. your podcast, Straight Out of the Bodega. And we've got, so we're excited to have that one dropping on our network on Thursdays. Every Thursday, you're going to be able to check that out on the Lucha Central Podcast Network. We've got out of Mexico, we've got another podcast in Spanish that's dropping on Thursdays. And then we've got some monthly shows also. These shows are going to kind of just be once a month shows on some very specific topics. We've got one that's already launched called Lucha Libre Figures and Facts, where we take a wrestling figure, talk about the history of that luchador, the time and place that figure was based off of. The first episode's up right now covering Halloween Havoc 97, Ray and Eddie figures. So you get a little bit of history. You get a little bit of insider perspective from the toy industry because Eric Aranya of Boss Fight Studios is on there talking about from the toy industry, kind of what probably went into making the toy, the type of toy. And then you've got Jeff and Scott Toon from the Fully Posable Figure podcast, where they are the ultimate collectors of toys. They have an insane collection. So they're on there talking about, their chase to find those figures most likely, because they have almost every figure that we're going to be talking about. Their, stories of their fandom, what is the collectability of this figure these days? What is the value of this figure? So a really kind of unique, interesting way to blend Lucha Libre history and a toy podcast. We've got the Mask Cast, which is starting soon as well. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but I think maybe you've seen their social media. But there are two brothers in Pittsburgh, not California, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Dos Hermanos Lucha, and they have acquired over the years the most insane collection of all ring-worn masks and outfits. And they have really kind of become experts in mask collecting. And they'll even talk about on the first episode how, they don't collect the classics, right? There's a lot of people out there that collect, they want the Blue Demon original and the Santo original and those and that. And that's cool. And they're like, that is awesome. That's just not who we are. We started being wrestling fans in the 90s. And we are out there collecting Rays and Psychoses and even the modern guys today, Pentas and Phoenixes. And so they're starting a really great podcast to get people into mask collecting. You want to start your collection. You want to know how to, tell if something's ring worn. You want to know the value of certain things that aren't ring worn and, how to approach collecting masks and talking about the masks in their collection and the stories behind those masks and having guests on and talking about other people's collections. And
they're like Pawn Stars then.
Exactly. It is. It's going to basically be, Pawn Stars meets, lucha collecting. Yeah. And so we're looking forward to that. I haven't really said it anywhere else yet, but I'm going to be doing my own podcast as well once a month. It's going to be the Business of the Business podcast, and it's going to be mostly about licensing and merchandising and making cool pro wrestling merchandise. Going to talk to artists, going to talk to merchandise companies, going to talk to different people that are involved in merchandising Lucha Libre and pro wrestling. So basically, we're going to have 4 different monthly podcasts, and those are going to drop on Mondays and Tuesdays, staggered out so that every week you got something new coming. So we got other shows already in development for June and beyond. So it's all Lucha Central Podcast Network, and you can obviously get all the information at luchacentral.com. But we also are setting this up in a unique way, I think, where if you are a big fan of a show like Straight Out of the Bodega, you can go and you can subscribe to that particular podcast feed. But if you want to get everything all in one place so you don't have to go on hunt and subscribe to a million podcasts, you can also just subscribe to Lucha Central Podcast Network on your favorite platform, and we're going to load all of the podcasts in there. So you get everything just directly to you in one feed, English, Spanish, all the different topics. So you can check that out as well. By the time this airs, we should be up on all the platforms. Right now, at this moment, we're just still waiting for things to clear on iTunes and Google Play and iHeartRadio. But by the time this airs, I think we'll be good everywhere. It's certainly on Spotify and Stitcher and all over the place right now.
So what you're saying is that Papo Esco's beautiful golden voice will be heard on iHeartRadio?
It will be on the iHeartRadio app. You will be able to hear the golden voice. And
well, damn. I don't know what to say. I'll say this on behalf of Gabe and me. We're definitely excited to be a part of this venture. We're definitely going to hold up our end of the bargain, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that we contribute to making this brand a bigger brand. I mean, we're small fish, so I'm glad you're taking a chance on us.
Well, you guys are making a good show, and I think, look, what we're trying to do is bring a greater audience to a lot of the cool podcasts out there that aren't doing the same thing. There's a bazillion podcasts out there, right? And we want to just bring a really eclectic mix of good shows, a number of new voices. I mean, that's even with Lucha Central. When we started the website, we wanted to bring the new voices in Lucha Libre. There's a lot of talented writers and interviewers and different things out there who just weren't really known, and we were able to bring them together on Lucha Central. Eric Mutter and Pep and Miguel and Monica, and they kind of drive the daily content over at luchacentral.com. And those are all voices where maybe they did have some audience, especially in Mexico, or Eric had his own blog, but, raising those really good and talented voices up and letting more people hear and see that. And so I'm excited to, do what we can to build this podcast, if we can, even bigger on our platform as we expand.
And on that note, we are out of time. Yes, Gabe. Now, I know you say this all the time, but we do have time limits. We definitely went through a lot of content. This has been an amazing as a fanboy, an amazing.
What month is it? 'Cause I lost track of time 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, we're sheltered in place, man. I really don't know. I mean, every day bleeds into the next. But before we go, I like to make sure that everybody shouts out their social media. So, Kevin, if you please, shout out every single piece of social media that you have.
So I keep it super simple. Masked Republic is everywhere at Masked, MASKED, Republic. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And then for Lucha Central, it's just a little bit slightly more complicated. It's Lucha Central on Facebook and on Instagram. And on Twitter, it's luchacentral.com. And of course, it is luchacentral.com that you should be. Do people still bookmark? If you still bookmark the site. Check it every day. If not, just save it in your favorites or whatever the kids do these days. But hit Lucha Central every day, because literally every day there's fresh new content. It covers all that. You get not only do you get Lucha Libre, but you get WWE results, you get AEW results, especially with an emphasis on the luchadors there. But you've got your match of the day, great historic wrestling matches, Lucha Libre matches every day. You've got now the podcast. You can get all the podcasts off on the website. We've got polls every week. We're going to be debuting rankings, and you guys can all come on and debate the rankings of how we ranked all the luchadors every week. So definitely check out luchacentral.com, and that's all.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, we're definitely going to be marketing everything that has to do with Lucha Central, Masked Republic, and everything that goes along with it, man. We love you guys. Gabe Ramirez, your social.
Just like Kevin, everything at PW Revolution across the board. So follow us there. And then It's happened overnight, like an overnight sensation. We really haven't set anything up, but if you guys can take a gander over at lucha-masks.com, and that's our new venture right now that we're trying to make use during this unique and jacked up times. But we're trying to combine the best world of lucha libre, our culture of masks, and making it to use with the current needs of the world right now. And so all that's being powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution. So if you can follow us that. And then also thank you, Kevin, for coming on. Thank you for working with me through all these little projects we've had over the time. You make me look very good and much more bigger than I really am. So I appreciate all your help.
I appreciate your help and being a good partner in all these things throughout the years. And I know we've just scratched the surface.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Well, that's our time. I'd like to welcome everyone, new listeners, old listeners, for tuning in, for pulling up to Straight Out the Bodega. I'm your master of ceremonies, the king, FatBoy Papo Esco, my co-host, Gabe Ramirez, the very, very magnificent Kevin Kleinrock. We will see y'all next time. And that, mi gente, is all she wrote. Man, shout out to Kevin Kleinrock. Very honored to have had you on the podcast. I know this won't be the last time, but before we bring you back, you're going to have to bring the boys of Straight Out of the Bodega on your podcast, The Business of the Business. Brand new to the Lucha Central Podcast Network, hosted by my man Kevin Kleinrock. New episodes up. I encourage you guys to go give it a listen. That's all the time we got. Before we go, check out our social medias. Instagram, Straight Out of the Bodega. Facebook, Straight Out of the Bodega. Twitter, at STR8OUTDABODEGA. You know what? I was mad at Twitter before because they didn't give me enough characters in the at. But this kind of grew on me, so I think we're going to keep it. Also, check out my social media. Instagram, Papo Esco. Facebook, Papo Esco. Twitter, Papo_Esco. Snapchat, Papo Esco. Tinder. No, I don't have a Tinder. I'm just kidding. All right, we'll see you next time. You ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here. On behalf of the podcast, I am your master of ceremonies, the king, FatBoy Papo Esco. We out.
Ever had a dream of becoming a pro wrestler? Or maybe your dream is becoming a pro wrestling manager, referee, ring announcer, or commentator. If you're ready to turn your dream into reality, then Pro Wrestling Revolution Training Academy is for you. Northern California's premier pro wrestling training academy. Pro Wrestling Revolution Training Academy is located in San Jose, California, and with over 24 years of experience, we specialize in all areas, from lucha libre, American style, ring psychology, industry etiquette, and much more. You'll be welcomed into a family environment where our head trainer, Hall of Famer, the Brown Bomber, Robert Thompson, and our training staff will start you on your journey and fully prepare you to get in the ring and make your dream a reality. Past trainees include AEW's Jungle Boy, UFC World Champion and WWE star Cain Velasquez, the King FatBoy Papo Esco, and many more. Be the next star. Contact Pro Wrestling Revolution Academy now. Call 408-728-8318. Visit our Facebook page or go to prowrestling-revolution.com/training and make your dream a reality.